What's up, everyone? Welcome to a special live edition of the Athletic Hockey Show. I'm Hailey Salvian here with Sean Gentili. As usual, and Max Boltman decided to join us today for our Eastern Conference preview. What's up, guys?
I like how you said decided to join. I just dropped in. I popped in unannounced.
Wasn't asked. I'd like to give a special. Hold on a second. I'd like to give a special hello to all our viewers out there who are taking off work, I guess, on Thursday in anticipation of the first round of the NHL playoffs in like 48 hours. Hello. Welcome.
That's right. We're doing this for you guys.
Yep, for Frank Salvian on his recliner. He's turned off the Golf Channel and he's watching this on YouTube. He knows how to do that. It's my dad. Okay, so by tonight, we'll finally find out the entire NHL playoff picture, maybe even the schedule as well. Maybe in a couple days we can hope for a schedule because the playoffs start on Saturday. Still some shuffling for position in the Western Conference, but the East is set and we're going to dive into those four matchups today. Matthew Fairburn is going to join us from Buffalo in about 10 minutes here soon. But let's start with the 2-3 matchup between the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Montreal Canadiens. Guys, we all picked Tampa to win the Stanley Cup last year. They lost in the first round to the eventual champs, the Florida Panthers. So that's like, it's okay. It's not as embarrassing that they lost to the Cats. But this year they face a young, exciting, fun core in the Montreal Canadiens. Let's start with Tampa. Why might this year be different?
Because they've wire to wire been at least one of the two best, if not the best teams in the East. I mean, they have a lot going for them. They have star power. They have Braden Point. They have Nikita Kucherov. Their blue line's a little bit dinged up, and I'm sure we'll get to that in a little bit. They have their kind of depth back. Their cup teams were built around having third lines that could go toe-to-toe with other teams' top lines or crush matchups against other teams' bottom six lines. I think they're kind of back to that vibe here. Injuries are going to be a factor. They also, by the way, have, I can't believe I didn't mention this, like one of the 3 to 5 best goalies in the world, and Andrei Vasilevsky. So they can do this because they are one of the most complete teams in the NHL.
I think Montreal would be a favorite against certain other teams, largely because of those guys at the top of the lineup. We're talking about Cole Caulfield, Nick Suzuki, Juraj Slafkovsky, certainly Cole Hut or Lane Hudson rather. God, I spent too much time around the Washington Capitals last week. Oh, good. Caps brain. Yeah. Those guys at the top of it, and we saw it in bits and pieces last year against Washington in the first round, but they've obviously totally leveled up over the last few months. Those guys have all added something to their game. I think, Cole Caulfield, 51 goals. He leads the league in per 60 in that category. Obviously, impressive, incredible stuff for him. But the way he's gone about those numbers has changed as well. Like, he's a playmaker now. If you look at Corey Snyder's scoring player tracking stats, his scoring chance contributions are through the roof. Like, he's really, really improved there this year. He's a +3 defensive player based on defensive rating, which is something, if you would have told even the most ardent Cole Caulfield defender a couple years ago that was in the cards, I don't think they would have necessarily believed you. So those numbers are great. It comes, of course, partially from playing with Suzuki, who's probably going to win the Selke Trophy. He's a 101-point player this year. Just continues adding levels to a two-way game that was already solid. And then Slafkovsky's a 30-goal scorer. Like, he's a player in his first 3 years in the league, it just continually added stuff to his bag, right? They relied on him last year to be a play driver and a defensive presence and, certainly a solid top six winger. But now he's been put in a more offensive context in that top line with Suzuki and Caulfield, and he's come through in a big way. So the fact that they have that first line is huge. But the issue for them is that Tampa can match them at the top, and then, like Max said, they have that depth as well. If you look at it at net rating, they're 3 times what Montreal is, and that's because they have effective players. Tampa does sprinkled throughout that forward group. So Tampa's got the top end. We all know how good Nikita Kucherov is, but also, man, the depth is back too. And I think that's what makes them a fairly prohibitive favorite in this one.
I think what's interesting too is, like, Montreal does have some depth, right? Like in Jake Evans, Philip Deneau, like they have guys who I think you really like as a playoff team in the bottom six. Their second line, I think, is where Tampa like really takes the edge for it. It's kind of the middle of the lineup. The Tampa's top end goes a little deeper, and then they can go bottom six for bottom six with Montreal, maybe even a little more proven, a little better. But like I really like Jake Evans, Philip Deneau, Josh Anderson. Like these are good players Montreal has. It's just I think Tampa pound for pound can edge them at almost every spot in the lineup.
That's an issue that you see from teams so often, where you have third layer players that are expected to produce like second layer players. That doesn't make them bad. That just makes them, slotted a little bit too high up the lineup. And I think that's Montreal's fundamental problem for sure.
Is there a level of concern, though, as Sean is talking about the stars on the Montreal Canadiens? I mean, Cole Caulfield becomes the first Canadiens player to score 50 goals in 36 seasons. Like, they have legitimate stars at the top of their lineup. Are we concerned about the fact that you're going to have those players, not just going up against more depth on Tampa's forward group, but a pretty depleted Tampa Bay blue line, like in favor of the Montreal Canadiens? Are we going to see those young guns go to work against a blue line that has, been impacted by injuries?
Quite possibly. Like Victor Hedman's been out, and we'll see like where he's at. But to me, Nick Suzuki is the kind of player who I think can drive your entire attack at this point. I wrestled long and hard with putting him on my Hart Trophy ballot this year, because when you're a 100-point player who's also likely, like Sean said, going to win the Selke Trophy, you can dictate the game. John Cooper knows that very well. He saw it firsthand at the Olympics. I think Nick Suzuki has a pretty good chance to, draw even in his matchups on the forward lines. And in those shifts where they're in the O-zone, they can go to work against this Tampa D. Now, the Tampa blue line, I should say, like they've had some guys break out this year. Like Darren Radish's breakout is not something I saw coming. I still think we need to see this in the playoffs and what it's going to look like in the playoffs. So much of it was kind of driven by what he's able to do in the offensive zone. And if he's the guy that they're matching on the Nick Suzuki line, maybe it's the Chernak line, either way, it's a more vulnerable Tampa blue line than we've seen in the past. And again, I think Montreal's stars can go to work. But the issue is, if they're drawing even against Tampa, I like Tampa to win down the lineup a little bit better. And that's kind of what I keep coming back to.
Absolutely. And Max, you mentioned Hedman. They don't know if they're going to have him or what they're going to get from him, right? But playoffs are a different beast. We always have to preface stuff like this with that statement. But their top four, as constituted, minus Hedman, has spent the regular season showing, that they're capable, at least when it comes to February games or April games, that they're capable of stepping up. And that starts with Radish, absolutely. But JJ Moser's been great. Charles Edward Dastas has been
revelation.
I would say a revel. I was trying to use a different word, honestly, because I think revelation's corny, but that's sort of the only way to describe it. That was
mean to Matt.
No, it's fair.
Like true. It's a cliche, but like cliches are cliches for a reason. Like sometimes it applies, and I think it does in his case. And then you have Ryan McDonough kicking around as well too, who's still getting them good minutes. So like, would it be better to have Victor Hedman? Absolutely. If they want to win a cup, are they going to have him? Almost certainly. But I think the matchup against Montreal allows them to tread water without him. And like I said before, they've generally spent the last 6 months recreating Victor Hedman in the collective, right? Like Darren Radish gives some of what peak Victor Hedman gave you offensively, and Moser takes some of the defensive work that they expect from him. Yeah, he was a two-way horse at his best, and that's not necessarily a replaceable thing, but you can get bits and pieces, from other guys in that lineup, and I think they've done good. They've done good with that.
Do you guys feel comfortable saying that Andrei Vasilevsky is back and going to keep doing his thing in the postseason? Because he's been great in the regular season this year. But something that's important to consider, he hasn't been very good in 3 straight playoffs. An under 900 save percentage, negative goals saved above expected in each series. Where are you guys at? What's the comfort level or the vibe check on Vasilevsky heading into this year's postseason?
I was just going to say, you said keep doing his thing in the postseason, and I was like, which
Well,
thing?
I meant
Not necessarily a good
his
thing.
regular season thing. Is he going to keep doing his regular
Yeah.
season thing into the post? Not what he's been doing in the postseason the last few years.
I think he bounces back. I mean, Vasilevsky's one of those guys who I'm pretty willing to give as much leeway as humanly possible to, based on what we've seen him do before. I think the first couple of those playoff runs where he was not good, following their run of 3 straight, I was pretty willing to chalk up to overwork. I don't know that that's really the case last year. And I'm kind of banking on the fact that, as someone who really loves Andrei Vasilevsky's game, the reduction of games he's played the last 2 or 3 years leads him to a fresher, better place. I think we saw that through a lot of the season. I think he was one of the 3 best goalies in the NHL this year. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, but I'm also not going to blame anybody who can't. I mean, Jesse made the point, or maybe Laz, one of them made the point on the Monday show earlier this year. Like, a lot of this, it might have actually been McIndoe. A lot of the same things that we say about Connor Hellebuck have been true of Andrei Vasilevsky in recent memory.
And also, some of the things we said about Andrei Vasilevsky last season are true this season. Like, that's a big reason so many people picked that team to win the cup last year, because he'd rounded into shape. He looked like he was completely back from the back injury. Everyone's like, okay, there's the big cat. Like, that's the X factor. That's why everybody loves Tampa. And that's, he's still a relatively young man, by the way. I think people treat Vasilevsky like he's a little bit older than he is. So I don't know that it's necessarily we're not talking about a 39-year-old guy who we're hoping, dials it back up, right? Like, he's not at that point of his career yet. But also, everyone convinced himself that he was going to flip the script on his recent postseason performance last year, and it didn't happen. So there is a level of wariness that I have, when it comes to just assuming that he's going to snap back to shape, because it's what we assumed would happen last year, and that's obviously not how it played out. Yeah, 867, 899, 873 in 3 consecutive playoffs is a little alarming, and I think, much great as he is, and he's a no doubt first ballot Hall of Famer and all that fun stuff, I think we need to reckon with the new reality, and that's that he hasn't been at that level in the postseason for the last several years.
Here's something I'm interested in, though, Sean, is like, you getting Andrei Vasilevsky in a playoff series against a rookie goalie. I tell you that in the abstract, you're all over it, right? Except for who's played the better hockey in the last month or so here.
Yep.
Might be Jakub Dobeš. Does that sway anything for you, or is the playoff spotlight, the playoff beast, kind of overwhelmed?
I mean, it's like undeniably Jakub Dobeš. Like, since the Olympic break, he's up. I think it's a .916 save percentage. He's top 5 or top 6 in goals saved above expected. He's been a huge part of Montreal's finishing kick, and he's a real reason to think. Sam Montembeault he played himself out over the last year or two. Like, we knew that they were going to have some answer emerge, whether it was Dobeš, whether it was Jacob Fowler. They were going to need to have some other answer. And Dobeš has been great. So, like, does that mean that I'm going to pick him head to head against Andrei Vasilevsky in a series? Like, not necessarily. But in the cold light of day, when you're looking at the way those guys have played down the stretch, I think Dobeš has been better. And yeah, he's new guy on the scene. He doesn't have the postseason resume, good or bad, that Vasilevsky has, but you also can't really ignore how good he's been. It's something to track.
And it's something to keep an eye to. He's let in 9 goals in his last 2 games. Is this like nerves? Is it just end of season? We're all kind of tired. No one's playing super great. Their last 2 games for the Canadiens haven't been great, but they've also been in the playoffs and their first round opponent, and their matchup has been set. So I don't want to cherry pick on, 2 of his last games at the end of the season, but I always look at that and say, something to keep an eye on. It'll be an interesting matchup. I love the first round, and I feel like this is one of those series that could like maybe sneak up on you if you haven't, if you're locked in on like Pens Flyers, because it's 2026 and we're still seeing those 2 teams. The Buffalo Sabres, they're not just in the postseason, but they're one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference. I think Habs Lightning could sneak up on people as one of the more entertaining and fun playoff series, especially considering how fun Habs Caps was. What was it, last year? That was one of the best series in the playoffs.
That's as good a 5-game series as you're going to see.
So we could maybe see a little bit of that again.
It
Matthew Fairburn. Oh, go ahead, Max.
It tells you something that, like, I think the Tampa Bay Lightning are the best team in the East, and I am not confident picking them to get out of the first round. Like, this should be one of the most entertaining series that we get in the first round of the playoffs.
All right, let's move on. Matthew Fairburn, he's joining us now because, like we just said, the Buffalo Sabres, they didn't just end their playoff drought. One of the best teams in the Eastern Conference this season. Matt, thanks so much for joining us. How fun has this last couple weeks been for you in Buffalo?
Yeah, it's been wild. I mean, last night the regular season ended and it felt like I should be coming to locker clean out day today and getting my post-mortem ready. And then it's like, oh, the playoffs. Like, we got to figure out what this is all about. And it's just, it feels like we've covered two different seasons. How they were up until mid-December and then how they've been since has been pretty jarring. And yeah, it's got the whole city buzzing for sure.
Matt, I know you wrote something yesterday about the Sabres effect on TV and whatever else in Western New York. But I'm wondering, man, like you've been in this most of your life and you've certainly been in it over the last few months. What was the most interesting Sabres are back moment that you've seen? Was it the guy in the hoodie? Was it the guy in the hoodie behind the bench? Because that felt like it really crystallized something for me personally.
That was definitely pretty funny. I mean, it's hard to pick anything other than that 8-7 Lightning game in March. Like I covered the NFL for a while here in Buffalo, covered college sports before that. That 8-7 game against the Lightning, I think, was the most intense sporting event, like atmosphere wise, that I've ever been at. And to think it could go up a notch from that in the playoffs and the energy in this building, things like that. I mean, it slowly started to turn, and everybody said when this team gets good, you know, this building will be insane. I just didn't expect it to flip so quickly. Like, people were so ready to buy in. And that game against the Lightning was one of those moments where it's like the community is all in, but the team is capable of playing in a game like that physical, that rough, that intense, all those lead changes. That was like, oh, this might not just be a playoff team. This might be a serious contender.
Matt, there's been so much talk about with the Sabres as they've seasons played out, and I don't know how they responded to this, but just kind of this idea that their brand of hockey is a little more trading chances. It's up and down. How do you feel like they are prepared to go into playoff hockey, especially against a Bruins team that we know a lot of these guys have seen it? We know how they're going to try to play this game. How prepared do you think the Sabres are to do what it's going to take to win a playoff series?
Yeah, I actually asked Lindy Ruff about his playing style, his team's playing style yesterday, and he kind of bristles at the question every time it's asked. And I think the big thing that's different about this Sabres team than years past is that it's calculated risk. And they have 5 guys playing together that the forwards get back now with more regularity. And it's weird when you see defensemen at the front of the net tipping in goals, right? Like one defenseman shoots it and the other defenseman's tipping it in. Like, that's how they play. You don't know where the chances are coming from because 5 guys are all involved. And especially those top 4 defensemen can pinch in and create chaos in the offensive zone. But they now have a team that's bought into what it's supposed to look like away from the puck. And so you'll have a Jack Quinn swapping with Mattias Samuelsson to cover that point so that they can take those chances. And I just don't think you play 4 months of consistent hockey like this if this playing style doesn't work. And they showed in that Tampa game, they've showed at other times that if the game is tight, and it's going to get physical and there's going to be teams trying to push them around, like I'm sure the Bruins are going to try to do, they're happy to play in that type of game too. They've won hockey games 1-0, 2-1, 3-1. They won 8-7 against the Lightning. So I think they've gotten a taste of every style of play. And now we're going to see when things get tighter in the playoffs, if they can elevate and play that style of hockey too.
Is it fair to say, though, that style still places like a pretty big reliance on getting good performance in goal? I mean, all hockey does, but like, I think that style in particular, and the Sabres had one of the best goaltending stories of the season in Alex Lyon. His breakout over the second half was phenomenal. Really, a guy who I think has fought for this, but who had never done that kind of workload and sustained that level of performance that long. I guess that's just kind of my one question is, like, going into this, if the goaltending even wobbles a little bit with their style, they feel more vulnerable than most.
Absolutely. A couple of weeks ago, they went through a little bit of a lull, a little bit of a dip, and they were losing some games. And a lot of people were, trying to peel back psychological reasons, like maybe they took their foot off the gas, or maybe the pressure of clinching is getting to them. But really what was happening is they weren't getting saves, right? Yeah. And I think that's true of most teams, is if you don't get saves, you're going to have a hard time winning. But the fact of the matter is, when you look at this 4-month stretch where they played like the best team in the NHL, they had the best save percentage in the NHL. And that's Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, and that's Alex Lyon. I do think there is a lot more predictability with how the Sabres play now. They're not getting these goalies going completely, playing out of their minds, standing on their head and hanging them out to dry, and they're making huge saves. I think there's a predictability in how these goalies can read the game now, where the chances are coming from. And that's a big difference from a couple of seasons ago. But there's no question, like going into the playoffs, I think they go as far as Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen takes them, or Alex Lyon. Alex Lyon's currently dealing with a lower body injury. He's not out there at practice right now, hasn't been out there for about a week. So he's questionable to start the playoffs. But it's Luukkonen's net anyways. He had earned it. And if he can stay dialed in, especially in the first round against arguably the best goalie in the league right now, I think that's going to be a huge key.
I think it's pretty fair to say that Rasmus Dahlin is the best player in this series. How was he different this season from last season, Matt? And then can you maybe take us through a bit of what the second pairing or the rest of that blue line looks like after him? Because as great as Dahlin is, he's not the only guy they have going too.
I don't know if there's a massive difference in Rasmus Dahlin this season, besides the fact that the Sabres are good and everybody is paying a little bit more attention to him. I mean, the biggest difference for him is off the ice. Everything his fiance went through in the offseason. She needed an emergency heart transplant. She was pregnant with their first child and lost the baby in the process. Like, that undoubtedly changed the man that Rasmus Dahlin is and how he's shown up as a leader. Like, the respect they have in the locker room for that guy, they already had a ton, but the fact that, he stepped away from the team for a few games, came back, like just what he's played through, I think he's become a different kind of leader. And he really is the heart and soul of this team in every way. He's so competitive. He fought for the first time this year against Aaron Radish, which was a sight to see, but it really just feels like everybody is seeing what Rasmus Dahlin has always been. And the fact that he's playing at a Norris caliber level, despite everything going on off the ice, is incredible. The second pair of Bowen Byram and Owen Power, that top four on defense, that is the identity of this team. Like, that is their bread and butter. That is why they are so good. The way those guys skate, the way those guys carry the puck, the way they contribute to the offense and pile up points and just make things difficult on other teams in the defensive zone and in transition, because even Matthias Samuelsson, who people think is a stay-at-home defensive guy, like, he can get involved in the offense. He's got a good shot. He knows when to use it. And so they'll lean on those top four a lot, to the point where they'll even take the third pair, and it won't even be a third pair. Those guys individually will just rotate in with the top four, and they'll eat a ton of minutes. They're all young. They're all capable of handling it, but outside of Bowen Byram, none of them have ever been to the playoffs. So this is a new challenge for these guys.
We have a commenter on here. We'll just cue this comment up here. Just wanted to shout this guy out, see what you think. They say 4 Kings, Dahlin, Byram, Samuelsson, and Power. No one else has that dimension. Would you agree with that? Is that like a Sabre superpower, is what they've got on the back end there?
Absolutely. Brian Cummings, a loyal reader of ours at The Athletic, one of my favorite commenters. Great guy. That is their edge. That is their advantage. Like, when you think about the Sabres forward group, they've got some talent there, right? But there's other teams that have better high-end scoring up front. There's no other team in the NHL, I think, that has 4 guys that can. I just think about the way those guys skate and carry the puck. You notice it when you watch other teams and you realize, like, the way they're breaking the puck out is so much more difficult because they don't have these guys that can make that first pass clean every time, or just skate it out of the zone themselves and transition so quickly. All 4 of those guys just move so well. And now we're going to see, like, if I'm the Bruins, I'm coming heavy with the forecheck, and I'm going after these guys, because that's the one time where they, if they have dips in their play, which is rare for those top 4, it's because they're having some trouble getting the puck out of the zone. And it's the teams that are heavier and more tenacious on the forecheck that tend to get to them. Because if you give them enough space and time to retrieve the puck, they're going to find the opening. They're going to skate it out themselves, and they're going to get the offense going the other way. They're impressive, and it'll be fun to see, the rest of the league and the rest of the country get to see what those guys do.
Matt, you mentioned the forward depth in your answer about the defense, which I think is interesting. That gives them a major leg up on Boston, honestly, the depth production that they have. I know the high end maybe isn't what you'd want to see necessarily outside of Tage. 7 guys who scored over 2 points a game at 5-on-5, or 2 points per 60 at 5-on-5, which is interesting. I'm wondering which player from that group is one to watch in particular in this series, because they do have a pretty deep group of productive guys there.
Yeah, that's tough to pick one. The one guy I'm really interested to see in the postseason is Zach Benson. He's been really heating up down the stretch with points, but he impacts the game in so many ways. It feels like he's going to be a playoff type of player. He's really a pain to play against. He's always chirping after the whistle, getting in guys' faces. But more importantly, like the way he battles, especially at his size, he's always coming away with the puck in the corner. He makes plays down low in tight spaces. And now the offense is starting to come for him. So that line really of Benson, Norris, Doan is what they've been going with lately. It's starting to get Norris going, which could be dangerous, right? A guy that scored 35 goals finally starting to come around with his shot. You got Doan as a 25-goal scorer. Like, that line feels like it could swing things, because we know the Bruins are going to try to take away Tage Thompson and Alex Tuch as best they can. They're going to need that line and then the McLeod, Zucker Quinn line to come through. But Benson is the guy that, I can't take my eyes off of when he's on the ice, because he's always doing something that's impacting the game.
Speaking of the bottom 6, Matt, can I just make a bold prediction here for this series right now? Tyson Kozak has 6 points this season. Tyson Kozak is a dog, and he is going to score or assist on a game-winning goal in this series.
It's prospect brain.
Crazy take or what?
I like it. I mean, I'm curious to see what they do with that fourth line, because right before I jumped on here watching practice, they had Josh Dunn skating in the middle of Greenway and Mallenstein. That feels
there goes my take.
That feels like the spot, though, where they're going to be swapping guys in and out. Like, Kozak plays with a ton of speed, and I do think he's got a big goal in him at some point in the playoffs. I've been, joking with my editor, like, I've got the feature ready, like, to go once he does something.
That's pro stuff, buddy.
You like
going in the can ready to drop.
Because he's such a fun player to watch. But I do wonder if they go with Dunn early in the series, because that fourth line, in Boston, like, those are heavy hitters. They might, everybody, a lot of guys on Boston are willing to drop the gloves and willing to fight. That's not really Kozak's game, but Dunn is willing to do that. They've got a lot of pieces that they can swap in and out on that fourth line, but that's a deep cut there on Kozak. I respect it.
Max put in the chat, hold on, I need to make a bold prediction, and that's
seriously
not
seriously what it was.
We're like,
we need to let Matt go, but also
Max has something he wants to say. He's very passionate about that.
Kozak,
we've got one more commenter. I'm sorry for this, Matt. Someone says heads or tails? For a team with almost no playoff experience, Sabres fans are getting a little overzealous. Maybe this is a shot at Max specifically. I want Buffalo to do well, but it won't be a cakewalk. And Matt, I feel like you've said that. Like, this blue line has been good, but other than Bo Byram, like, this is going to be a new test for everyone in the Boston Bruins. There's certainly a question of, like, can they keep doing this? What kind of Sean, like, what can the Bruins mix it up? Like, what's your thought on that? Like, I think it's okay for fans to be excited and to say that this team is very good, and maybe the Bruins aren't that great. I don't know.
It's been fascinating to see. Like, at one point, it was like, if the Sabres can just end the drought, this will be an amazing season. The fans will be happy. And now they're like, this team's got to go deep, right? Like, they're really fired up. You win the Atlantic Division, like, the expectation, the bar goes up, and so I do think it's going to be a tougher series than maybe the odds makers have it right now. It favors the Sabres pretty significantly, but it's all about how quickly they can get up to speed experience-wise, right? With the playoffs being new for a lot of these guys. I was talking to Luke Shen a couple of weeks ago, and he's like, it could go either way. Like, sometimes it's an advantage to go into the playoffs and just be naive and not really know and just, kind of use your inexperience to your advantage. But you don't know until you're in the battle. I think it's big that the first 2 games are at home, so that they can they don't have to go to Boston and deal with that crowd and potentially fall behind the 8 ball in the series. This building is going to be insane this weekend. Whenever the game is, it's going to be one of the best atmospheres in the playoffs, I'm sure. And that could help them get the ball rolling. But in the story I wrote this morning, I've got Sabres in 7. Like, I don't think it's going to be easy. And I think this Bruins team won't go away quietly for sure.
Sabres in 3. Let's go.
Jeez. Thank you so much, Matt. We appreciate all your time. Thanks for doing this during practice.
Thanks, Matt.
You bet.
We got to get...
What do you guys think? Do you think, like, Sean, we had Fluto on for a little while last week. So if fans are listening and you want a little bit more depth on the Bruins, I do recommend listening to that. Fluto was awesome, because I think the big question with the Boston Bruins really is, like, can they keep getting away with this? Because this is a team that went through a retool. You know, Jeremy Swayman has been like a big reason that this team is finding success this season. I don't want to call them a PDO team, because like they went through a great retool. Credit where credit is due, though. Like, Don Sweeney did a very good job retooling this roster. Like, they made the postseason. The Bruins are here. And even Dom's model, you guys had your playoff preview come out today. It's not like the Sabres are favored like 80% to 20. It looks like this is a series that could go the distance. It's 58% chance for the Sabres over 42 for the Bruins. But I think it would be a bit of a shock if the Boston Bruins won this playoff series. Is that crazy of me to think?
It's not crazy because it's Swayman. I know I'm joking about Sabres in 3. I obviously don't. I don't think this is necessarily going to be a quick series, because Boston, they're a PDO team. That's just a fact. But looped up in the PDO team, like, part of the implication there is that they have good goaltending. And I don't, in Swayman's case, I know he's like stubbed his toe a bit down the stretch, which Fluto had written about. I think, be that as it may, I think they have a pretty decisive edge there. So that's why they play the games. It's going to be fun.
I also think, like, I agree that the Sabres decor is the edge that they have that no one else does in terms of their mobility, in terms of their puck moving. But I also think that Boston has a very good blue line for trying to contain the Sabres. They have Charlie McAvoy. They have Nikita Zadorov. They have Hampus Lindholm. Like, they have guys who I think can make this a tougher series than Buffalo is naturally going to want it to be. I just think, like, when Buffalo gets you hemmed in, you are gasping for air. Yeah. And I think in the end, that's going to be enough to get Buffalo over the finish line. But I've seen Jeremy Swayman have 40 save games. He absolutely has it in him. And he can make this a really hard series and potentially steal the series. And I just think it's too much from Buffalo.
And if
David Pasternak exists too.
Of course. And Geeky,
for sure. And then beyond that, I think a lot of this hinges on the Pavel Zacha line. That's Zacha between Arvidsson and Casey Middlestead. They've been incredible this year. They've outscored opponents 42-22 when they're on the ice. And they're doing that. And when we say PDO team, they're doing that despite some pretty shaky underlying numbers. They don't have the puck that much, but they've also shown the kind of finishing ability to stake their team out to a pretty significant lead when they've got the puck. So if they can keep that going and get that second layer of scoring outside of the Pasternak Geeky line, I think all bets are off for sure. I don't mean to disrespect the Boston Bruins. I just think it's a funny bit to carry into a playoff preview.
Oh sure. I mean, I think it's going to be an interesting matchup just because both teams have star power at the top of the lineup. Boston's also happens to be in the pipes, and I think to Max's question and Matt's point, the Sabres might, as much as they have the star power in the blue line, they might only end up being as good as their play in the crease, especially if Swayman has a big series. All right, let's transition to our third playoff series here. Let's go Kane Sens here, guys.
The Corsi Bowl.
It's perfect. Are these two teams like pretty similar to you guys in the sense that they just love to generate offense and get pucks on net, but maybe not score all the time?
I don't remember if it was Cameron Gaunce or Frankie when we talked like a week ago on the Wednesday show said like it's the best shot creation and generation team in the league versus the best shot suppression team in the league. I think that's a good way to build this is like they both kind of try to dominate possession. Certainly. I think Ottawa's really, really good at keeping you to the outside, which has long been a Carolina hallmark. they are. It's also kind of a chaotic goaltending series. There is definitely a Spider-Man meme factor to this series, no question.
Carolina, you mentioned Corsi Cup, Corsi Bowl.
Corsi Bowl, it's perfect. I wish I came up with that.
They still, and of course it's true this year because it's true every year. They allow 6 fewer shot attempts per 60 than the next best team in the league. Like, this is a team that's territorially dominant as they've ever been, right? So I think, when I look at this, I look at a team that still wears the Corsi crown, and then you have like a young, more up and coming group, that's kind of coming for that title. I think that's ultimately the issue for Ottawa, is that, they're playing a more evolved version of themselves in the Carolina Hurricanes, and that's kind of a tough ask, because we know when Carolina loses in the playoffs, we know what it looks like. They run into a hot goaltender. They run into a team that has elite finishing talent. Example A is last season against Florida, when Barkov kind of put that team on his back down the clinching moments of it for Florida. That's what happens when Carolina flatlines in the playoffs. Goaltender who can withstand the barrage, elite talent that can push the opponent over the top when it matters most. Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily see that in the Ottawa Senators. I think they're pretty similar. I think Ottawa deserves a ton of credit for the season that they've had, but ultimately it's impossible to pick them over Carolina, because Carolina does what they do on a better, more effective level.
Okay, guys, what do you think of this comment here? Buffalo going all the way. Tampa is washed, regular season merchants. Ottawa is the dark horse.
Ottawa is the dark horse. I was very annoyed.
3 for 3. What do we think? What's the hit rate here?
1 for 3. Ottawa's the dark horse.
This looks like it's actually from a
Panthers.
That looks like
it's
a Panthers jersey in there. Yeah.
So remember when we went to the summit at the beginning of the year and we pre-taped those like prediction videos?
Yeah, so and everyone was picking like their dark horse candidate was like teams that have been legitimately good for years. Weren't you the one being like, none of these are dark horses?
Yes, I was. They cut me out of the bold prediction video predicting Ottawa to make the Final Four. For like 75% of the year, I was thrilled with that. I was like, oh yeah, no one knows I'm an idiot. But now I'm really mad that they cut me out of that, because now I kind of think Ottawa's going to make a sneaky push to the Final Four. I think Ottawa can do this, and I do think it comes down to goaltending. Now, Linus Ullmark, we all know that it was a rocky season for him. Down the stretch after the Olympic break, it has been better. He gives them a clear edge. And so in a matchup that I think are aptly describing as the two Spider-Mans pointing at each other, Hailey, like I do think that Linus Ullmark can be the X factor in that and getting Ottawa over the hump. I have questions still about the Senators, of course. How could you not? The Carolina was much more wire-to-wire dominant. But I just think the Sens have found something since the Olympic break here. They've tapped into, I think, the team that they should have been all year. A big part of that is Linus Ullmark. My biggest question, I don't know if you've seen this clip. Have you seen the clip of Brady falling into his own bench, losing his vision? Like, yeah, that's my one caveat is if Brady Tkachuk is not right, they are not the dark horse. They cannot go on the run that I think they have within their power, because they need him to drive the bus.
For sure. And I think there's been a lot of criticism against Brady at certain points this season for podcast stuff, for not being the guy over certain parts of the season, right? Of fans just saying like, we need more from our captain. And I think all that mess from the regular season can be glossed over with like a really strong playoff push. Like good, strong play down the stretch from Brady, or just like, going to work in the postseason. I think any kind of lull or a moment of frustration is so easily forgotten if Brady has a big playoffs. And I think this is like, just think of, even when I covered the team and think of all the years of the playoff droughts, it was like, we've got to get this guy in the postseason. Like, I want to see Brady Tkachuk in the playoffs because he is going to shine. And I think this is a huge opportunity for him and for the Sens. But then, you watch that and you're like, oh, geez, like you hope he's there and ready and healthy, because this is a huge moment for him to shine for this organization.
Absolutely. And I think Ottawa is like, the strength of their team right now, like they have enviable center depth. Stützle, Cousins, and Pinto, I think, is what you dream of when you set out to start a rebuild, to come out with 3 young centers like this. Stützle, you got your dynamic kind of do-it-all guy. Cousins, who I think is kind of playoff built in some ways. Time will tell if he's able to kind of fully tap into that. But I think we've seen this year he's reached more of his potential. Certainly he's a second line center all day. And then Pinto's like a Selke guy as your third line center. Like, this is what you want going into a playoff series. This is what Carolina, I think, wishes they had, was that true 1-2-3 in the way that the Ottawa Senators do. Carolina's more proven, but it's coming for Ottawa, and it might be here.
We haven't mentioned Jake Sanderson yet either. Like, he might be the most valuable player in this series. And in a lot of ways, I think a theme with this particular series is like, how do you go strength against strength, right? And when you're cut from such a similar cloth, I look at Jake Sanderson as a more evolved version of Jacob Slavin, because he's got the defensive chops, right? He's got the defensive value, but he's also at a point in his career where he impacts the game on all levels in a way that Slavin, I don't want to say can't, but hasn't, right? Jake Sanderson is an all situations beast who's a great defensive player, but also a really valuable offensive contributor too. So I think that being the case, I think that's another reason, again, is Ottawa the dark horse? Who knows? But I think they might have the best player in the series, honestly, pound for pound, in Sanderson. Like, he is that good.
I wanted to mention this about the Canes too, though, because people love to call them the Corsi Canes. Never enough offense. They're always one player away or one big goal away. They did finish this season with 7 20-goal scorers. And the Ottawa Senators, who were gassing up as this dark horse because they do have that potential, and Jake Sanderson's a huge part of that. The Sens had 5 20-goal scorers. So, maybe this does speak to Sean's, like, the Canes are the more leveled up version of the Senators. But, the Carolina Hurricanes have had, a consistent enough offense to get it done. Like, they're the number 1 team in the Eastern Conference. I just feel like every year we're talking about the Canes like it's the year they're going to be horrendous, or every team's going to upset the Canes, and yet every year they have, they finish among the top teams in the Eastern Conference and they make it to the Eastern Conference final. Like, I know they've got to get over the hump for us to truly get there with the full respect to the team. I understand that. They haven't won a Stanley Cup yet. They've lost in that Eastern Conference final in 3 of the last 4 seasons. But I do often feel like now I'm the one that's sitting here being like, the Canes don't get enough respect.
I think one of the most trenchant bits of criticism to come out of all the Canes postmortems that we've done in one way or another over the last few years is the question of whether they have another level to hit in the playoffs. And that's fair. That's fair
Right.
to ask, because the way Rod Brindamore coaches, it's like you play a game on a Tuesday in November the same way you do as game 6 of a playoff series, right? So what we see from them over the next couple weeks is going to be pretty similar to what we've seen from them for the last 6 months. That's always true of them. The variable here in a lot of ways to me is Nikolai Ehlers, because they added him for a reason. He was pretty good over the course of the regular season, but he's a guy who feels like he has another level to hit. He feels like there's more in the tank relative to what we saw from him over the regular season. And I think generally when we talk about the Carolina Hurricanes, that's not true. Those guys are great players, but Seth Jarvis is a great player at all times, and because that's what the system demands. And I don't necessarily think that we've seen that from Ehlers, and that's a variable. Like, is it like, would they rather have Nikolai Ehlers playing at his absolute best for the last 6 months? Like, absolutely. But be that as it may, like, there is still an unknown factor there in a way that there hasn't been for them in the past. And I think ultimately that's a good thing.
He's the most interesting player on their team, certainly for this series, for 2 reasons. 1, they need a guy like him who can break through. 2, his own background, he has not historically elevated in the playoffs. He did last year. Now you question, like, hey, was that because the light kind of went on? Was it because it was a walk year? There was huge motivation to do it. Was it kind of a fluke? these are the questions that make him so interesting, right? So I don't know who's covering this series for us. I really hope we get a great feature on Nikolai Ehlers trying to put his playoff demons to rest as the Carolina Hurricanes. I mean, that's not really a round one story, I suppose, but their demons are later on. But it's an interesting like fit from that sense where the team that kind of can't get over to the hump for the playoffs, their big ad is a guy who historically hasn't gotten.
If things are different for them, you can kind of see how it would be, and you know what I mean. You can see the path towards that breakthrough in the conference finals or whatever, and I think it starts with him.
All right, let's transition to the last one, the best one, the most fun series.
No,
guys, it's 2026, and Sidney Crosby is about to play against the Philadelphia Flyers in the postseason. I'm beaming.
Is anyone going to watch this series again if it's up against one of the other series that we just talked about? Like, I've been so much more juiced to talk.
What's wrong
you're
with
gonna watch.
You're a nerd.
You're gonna watch Kane.
You want to watch? That's fine. You want to watch?
Yes, I will absolutely watch.
Those are buddy. Those are on ice narratives, and that's what we care about, and that's great. We're interested in seeing, what happens with Ottawa, Carolina, for all those reasons we just talked about. Pens Flyers in a lot of ways is for the casual. Like the numbers that series does, and I say that obviously with all the affection in the world, because I'm looking out my window on my street in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, right? It's fine. It's compelling. There's nothing wrong with the series being for the casual fan, because the implication there is that it's compelling on a level that you don't typically see from a first round series. And that's what we're getting here, because you have old man Crosby, old man Malkin, old man Carlson, old man Letang, kind of old man Brian Rust, dragging this team, or I should say fronting this team that's been pretty good outside of a few lulls from the jump, and they're playing the cross-state rivals. Like this series has more juice than any other one in the first round, certainly in the Eastern Conference. I sincerely believe that. So
commenters weigh in on the chat. We need an opinion.
No,
on this.
don't look in the chat. Don't look in the chat. No, they're already dragging me in the chat, Max.
What we're seeing from Sabres fans, what we're seeing from this like explosion of passion and interest and intrigue in Western New York would have happened whether they were playing the Boston Bruins or the Ottawa Senators or a team with the three of us on the first line. It was going to happen no matter what. I think the fact that Pittsburgh, A, made it, B, made it decisively, and C, had the Flyers kind of emerge from the mosh pit in the Metro Division by the time it was all said and done is like incredibly, incredibly compelling.
Yeah, I mean,
I've never disagreed with you more about anything.
Yeah.
Anything.
The Pittsburgh Penguins have scored the second most goals in the Eastern Conference. Guess who scored the most? The Carolina Hurricanes, who everyone says they just don't score goals ever. So, yeah, that's my contention. Like, the Pittsburgh Penguins have scored 293 goals this season. This is not just like geriatric retirement home team. Like, and we've seen it in the way that the Pittsburgh Penguins are just marketing the fact that they made the playoffs. Nobody thought this team was going to get here. Everyone thought they were going to be, if not the worst team in the NHL, one of the bottom three teams in the NHL this season. And I think what we've really seen is not just like a great job by Kyle Dubas tinkering with this roster, moving some pieces out, getting some young players in, like Ben Kindle. What a great selection by the Pittsburgh Penguins. Like, that's the stuff that Kyle Dubas does. He's injecting youth into a roster, but also still doing a great job and understanding that Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin are still effective NHL players. Erik Karlsson is having a resurgent season. Chris Letang has been fine at times, but better, right? And I think we're looking at a team that I think, and I said this to Sean before we started working on the show, just to like gut check myself, is I almost wonder if everyone just completely underrated how bad of a job Mike Sullivan did last year. Like, I think the fact that the Penguins are such a shock to everyone just speaks to like, oh, maybe the coaching was a bigger problem than we thought, because Dan Muse is doing an excellent job and the roster is been retooled in a way that is effective. So we're seeing like two things that have completely taken everyone by surprise.
Absolutely. And I think that's the single biggest thing. And I was as wrong about this team as anybody. I showed up on the hype video that the Penguins put out couple weeks ago, like it's fine. Like I will wear that. I thought this team was going to stink out loud. I thought this was a bottom 5 roster, or would end up as a bottom 5 roster, because I figured that the Anthony Manthas and Ricard Raquels and maybe the Brian Rusts of the world, guys who are still useful players who are on, expiring contracts, were going to get sent out. Obviously hasn't happened. They started out very clearly as a solid enough team to prevent that from going down. I was wrong. But the thing that I didn't account for was the Muse glow up. I knew it was time for Sullivan to go. Like that goes without saying. It was overdue. It should have happened a year or two before it actually did. I did not grasp the degree to which Sullivan was coaching a roster that he didn't have anymore. I think that intellectually, but when you see someone else come in and really use a lot of the same pieces in a different, more effective, more tailored way, and that's coming from Dan Muse. Like you can't underestimate the swap out there.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is a team that, at various points, especially early in the season, there was a stretch in December where they lost 8 straight games and they were blowing leads like literally in the last couple minutes over and over again. That was the moment where you're like, okay, this is it. The wheels are off. They're gonna play at a 62-point pace for the rest of the season, and everyone here is going to be ready for the draft lottery. Right? I thought that was happening around the holidays. Wrong. It didn't. Yeah. They bounced back. And then they put themselves in such a position that they could withstand the loss of Sidney Crosby for a significant amount of time coming out of the playoffs. And Malkin. Right. So, they banked points and then scraped together enough where that wasn't disqualifying. It wasn't some extinction level event, which I think a lot of people thought it might be. This is a team that's, it's got Crosby and Malkin at the top, but that is a deep well of effective hockey players. And I think ultimately that's the difference between a team like Pittsburgh and a team like Boston. 2 teams who everybody thought was going to be at the bottom of the table at the start of the season. Pittsburgh wholesale, under the hood, over the hood, however you want to look at it, they've outkicked their coverage, right, relative to where we thought it would be, and it's been really, really impressive.
Yeah, I'm not down on the Penguins as a story or even as a team. I think they win this series.
Sounds like
it's more just
you just don't want to watch this playoff series for some reason.
What questions am I going to get answered by this series? It's like, can Igor Chinnikov and Anthony Mantha get to the middle against the Flyers? That doesn't get me excited.
Don't you want to?
What excites me about this series is the narrative. Like, it is Crosby and Malkin against the Flyers. Like, and
I just think they're going to win.
Just because I grew up watching like the Giroux Crosby dog fights in 2015 or whatever. But there's something very just like narratively cool of being like, Sidney Crosby's going to go beat up on the Philadelphia Flyers in the year of 2026. Hell yeah, I will sign up for that. It's just cool that like these are players that are still making an impact. Like these are players that I grew up on and they're still here and they're still doing it. And you've got that like vintage throwback feel.
That is
so
true.
I'm very excited about that.
Sid is always a sell. I agree with that.
And another element that makes this series as compelling as it is.
Zegras Legacy series, maybe?
Maybe. You never know.
Don't roll your eyes. It was in the chat.
The Flyers have looked like a different hockey team over the last 10 games than the one that came before that, right? Is you have a team that we know what the defensive identity it is for them. They're playing Rick Tocchet hockey, blah, blah, blah. Dan Vladar, reliably good. He's given them .905 goaltending, basic in very few meltdowns over the last however many months. That dude has been solid as hell. The difference for them over this last stretch is that they've looked like a competent offensive hockey team. And a lot of that starts with Porter Martone. Like that, we mentioned Kindle. Porter Martone might be the best young player in this series, and he's shown it in 8 games or whatever it is. He's been a point per game player. The dude shoots the puck at a psychotic rate. Like he is up with Brady Tkachuk and Cutter Gauthier in terms of per 60 shot rate, which is high praise. And I think it speaks to the kind of player that he could be down the line, and frankly, that he's shown himself to be in his first 8 games. We'll see if that carries over to the playoffs, maybe not. But that dude is a big, impactful, offensively gifted first line winger who generates a bunch of shots and makes a bunch of them too. And that is the exact kind of piece that they were missing for God, the last however many years, is a total package player like Porter Martone. So you add him to the mix. You add Tyson Foerster, who's like one of the most underrated players in the league. And I think you have, a group in Philly that's going to stop this from being some valedictory capstone, rivalry win for the Pittsburgh Penguins in kind of a late era playoff run by Crosby and Malkin. Like this team is playing really well, and they look different than they have for the last 6 months. And I think that has to be factored into everybody's thinking when you're talking about this one.
You said it with Martone. He was what they didn't have. I mean, prior to his arrival, they looked like a team that, if they got into the playoffs, was going to have to succeed basically by winning a 2-1 game, which is very tough over a long stretch if that's your only recipe, because the teams that have more skill than you are kind of also trying to win that game, and so they're probably going to be the 2 in that game. But Martone, I think, came through. It has come through in a big way for them. And I also think they have a couple more guys like that who can do it in flashes, right? Obviously, a Michkov playoff series would be narrative gold for a lot of reasons in this one. But Owen Tippett, too, like, this is a player who I don't think gets enough credit as a game breaker. The speed, the scoring. He's not going to do it all night long, and that's why you don't hear him pop up in, like, the Rocket Richard conversation. But he's got a ton of talent, and this guy can be a consistent 60-point winger, a 30-goal scorer, and certainly in one game, he can pot you 2, he can pot you 3, he can change a game. So I do think the Flyers have a few of those pieces. Their recipe for me, if they're going to find a way to do this, is to keep these games pretty low scoring, find the spots for their kind of game breakers to do it. I don't think they can win the matchup against Sidney Crosby, but that's the recipe.
Because that's what it really is. As much as I want to joke about how it's fun that this is Crosby versus the Flyers in 2026, like, the bottom line, and I'm stealing some of this from the playoff previews from Sean, Dom, and Shayna, Flyers have, a better defensive, they have a good defensive identity, superior goaltending, and Dan Vladar, still some question marks in the crease for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Skinner hasn't been as good. He's been better than Tristan Jarry, though. That's all you can ask for. But Pittsburgh's scoring depth and the guy at the top of the lineup gives them the edge. But that's all still on paper. Like, we've got to see how this all goes. Final thing before we get to some bold predictions.
Low key, the Fluto article. The Fluto article that was like Don Sweeney's like fleeces, and he created all those trades. I want to see Yoey do the exact same thing for Dubas just within the last year.
I think you can probably. I think you can probably expect one of those on the way for sure.
I mean, he's done a great job. I feel like periodically we just bring up, like, Kyle Dubas has been very good in Pittsburgh. It's almost like he's a good general manager and didn't tank the Toronto Maple Leafs.
I've said so many times that all his lottery tickets hit when you're talking about Mantha and, to a lesser degree, Brazo and Parker Wotherspoon and all these like Kyle Dubas approved players that he went out and got. Calling them lottery tickets is unfair because it doesn't account for the fact that he's a gifted enough evaluator who can pick out those players and
they're not just random shots in the dark. They're very intentional
targeted
decisions to make a hockey team better. It's what a general manager is supposed to do. I don't know. It's crazy. All right. Here's one more comment we've got to get to. Unfortunately, our friend Sam,
when is it?
Guy with the black hat, has some base takes. He knows puck.
Based Chantilly.
Congrats.
I'm big with the youth, baby. It's one of the first times I've been ever called based in my life. I appreciate you, Sam.
This guy knows puck.
I will say,
you almost... guys. Can I just say, I won over 200 USD. That's like 500 Canadian dollars at this point.
You buy a house with that.
I could. Not in Toronto. Not in Toronto, Max. Maybe in Pittsburgh. I won significant amount of money, coming second in my March Madness pool. So
congratulations!
I just can't
on
let
all
Sean
success.
have his like shining moment. I just want everyone
pick Michigan?
to know. I did.
That's why you won.
Because I'm not, a blind hater like Sean.
That's right.
Who knew that Michigan would probably win, but he's like, I refuse.
Arizona.
I won't do it. I won't do it. All right. let's get to some bold predictions here. Not bold predictions. Let's just predict how these playoff series are going to go. We can go back to the start. What did we start with, guys? We've been talking right now. Tampa, Montreal. Max?
Tampa.
And how many?
Tampa in 7.
Oh, I like that. That's I think Montreal wins a couple there. They made me a believer last year, honestly, with that series against the Caps. Like I said, most competitive 5-game series I've ever seen in my life. I'll say that they take another step forward this year and extend a series even further against a better team, but I don't think they're there yet. I think Tampa's depth is just a little bit too much for them to handle.
So Tampa in 7?
Tampa in 7.
I'll go Tampa in 6.
Yeah. 6.5 over under on that one.
Just because I think it's annoying if we all agree.
Yep.
I'm going to be bold. Okay. Boston, Buffalo.
Buffalo in 6.
Sabres in 5. I think they dominate. I think those first 2 home games, they're going to be
lit.
They're going to be on a heater. We need to get Josh Allen and Hailey Steinfeld and the kid like in the press box or something. That needs to happen. If that's the way it goes down.
Hailey Steinfeld, I perked up.
Sabres. If that goes down, Sabres in 3. If we get the Josh Allen baby shot in the luxury box, Sabres in 3.
I saw a tweet that was like, the Princess of Buffalo will never actually know any pain. Like, this baby is being born into the world, and in which the Sabres are a playoff team.
Is that baby why the drought finally snapped? You got to ask the question.
Everything's been better since Hailey Steinfeld got involved. My parents live like 30 minutes from KeyBank Center, and I was like, that'd be fun to go. And I looked at tickets, was like, wow, I'm stupid.
Never
Why
mind.
did I think I would just be able to get a single seat to go watch the Sabres in the postseason?
Good luck.
Got to get the podcast credential.
I feel like that would be really rude. I wouldn't do that because I would just be sitting there eating popcorn and having fun. I wouldn't actually be working.
Talking to Fairburn.
I'm doing research. I'm going
right.
to go Sabres in 6. Even though I'd rather go like 5.5, but that doesn't exist. Carolina, Ottawa. I'm going to go Canes at 5.
I like
7.
Hell yes. Good. You pick them so I don't have to. I'm going Canes in 5.
Do you say Sens in 7, Max?
I did.
I'll go Canes in 6. I think the goaltending edge is good enough to give Ottawa a bit there, because
if Brady
Allmark,
can
as
see,
we said, Allmark's
if Brady has vision.
Good.
If Brady has vision, Sens in 7.
Okay. Pens, Flyers. Anyone going to give Philly a bone?
No, I like the Pens in 5.
I'll say 6. I'll give the Flyers an extra game there just because of the Turnpike battle factor.
I was gonna go Pens in 6 too. All right,
you still can.
We're locked in. No, I am saying.
Thank God for Max picking Ottawa. That stopped that from being pure chalk, baby.
Yeah,
you're welcome.
Sam Static says Buffalo in 6, Montreal in 4 or 5. Wow, he's really this guy is based. You didn't even pick Montreal. Sens in 7, Pens in 6. You don't have the courage. Do you guys think he's going all in on Tampa being a washed regular season team?
I get it. We probably should learn our lesson. We all picked them to win the cup last year, and they got stomped.
Yeah,
so
but they got stomped by the eventual champs, like the best team in the NHL.
Maybe this year they also get stomped by the eventual champs.
I don't know.
No one liked that. Come on.
That's enough. All right. Our picks are locked in. Thanks, Sean. Thanks, Max. Thanks, Matthew Fairburn in Buffalo for doing that. He was like at practice going to talk to Lindy Ruff, and we just kept asking him questions.
I kept shoving Tyson Kozak bold predictions at him as he's trying to get to.
He was like, "I've got to go." It's crazy. That was rude.
Don't lose sight of the real culprit on that one.
Jesse's going to host. Jesse Granger is going to host our next show along with Marc Lazarus. DGB. Thomas Strantz is coming in too. My God. They're going to preview the first round of the Western Conference playoffs Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern. Enjoy the final night of the NHL regular season, everyone. Hopefully we get a playoff schedule.
Yeah.
Don't hold your
maybe
breath.
I'll get a playoff ticket. Maybe I'm gonna wait until like 5 minutes before puck drop and see if I can sneak in solo. Because I went to a concert alone and now I'm feeling really brave. And Fairburn just sold me on I've got to get in the building. I'm just gonna go sit in Buffalo alone. Get
in the box, baby Alan Steinfeld.
Oh my God! Wow, what a dream! Thanks everyone for listening. Go ahead, Max.
You think if you just show up and tell them you're Hailey, they'll think you're Hailey Steinfeld and just let you in?
Too tall.
I think they'd be like, you look busted in person. There's no way.
I'm not saying you lie. You just say I'm Hailey, and they'll go, "Oh, right, of course, we were told you."
I'm Hailey S.
I'm Hailey S. And I love Josh Allen.
That's right.
All true.
I've never been to a Sabres game before. She's probably been. Anyways, let's wrap it up. I don't think that would work. But thanks for the idea, Max. Thanks everyone for listening. This was fun. Glad we did the stream. Thanks for everyone who was listening live in here. And yeah, catch the Western Conference live stream on Friday. Bye, everyone.
Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe and ring the bell to stay informed and catch new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And in the meantime, you can join our Discord community. We'll see you there.